Hi everyone, welcome to Training with Octa. Today I'd like to go over a technique I use to get to know a new sword, get the feeling for stick mechanics and how that sword wants to operate. I think it's really important that you take the time. I do this before every practice just to kind of put your body and your sword together and get a feel for how things are moving. For the new tool, if you've just made a new stick, or for the same tool you've been using, but just making sure everything's operating the same way. It's a simple drill. First, we're going to start out feet shoulder width apart in kind of a non-combat stance, but just a comfortable stance. We're going to hold it thumb up or back edge up, and we're just going to let it sweep down. And we're just creating enough momentum that we let the sword flip back and forth. And what we're looking for right here is just to find that natural point where the sword wants to flip over. I usually feel like that's right in front of your sword side leg, and depending on the weight of the sword and the balance, it can shift a little bit. So once we've done this a couple of times, then we're going to step back and stop with the sword side edge facing up, the back side edge facing up, and we're just going to go through a simple mechanic. We're going to start by letting it follow that path we just did. It's going to turn to the backside edge up again, and it's going to, as it does, we're going to bring it up in front of our face. Now it's the front blade is up. We're going to rotate it to the back. Front blade's still up. Now we're going to point, and we're going to do it again. And we're going to allow that to rotate around and just get a feel. And as you get comfortable with the mechanic, you can put a little more inertia into it, but still just enough to keep the sword moving, letting it do its own thing. Don't squeeze too hard. I'm barely gripping the handle. If you have a trigger or a lanyard, we're just going to be nice and easy. And this is just a motion without any other body mechanics to get a feel for the sword. We're going to try and keep it on a plane. I'm going to turn here. I'm trying to keep it on a nice lateral plane, so I'm not letting it wobble in and out. Nice and straight. Okay. Once we've gotten this one down and we're feeling pretty good with this, and we feel how the sword's moving, now we're going to add a little body in there. So I'm going to come back down here, start here, and I'm going to turn my belly button, my body pointed at the sword, and as the sword comes through, as it wants to pivot, I'm going to pivot right with it, keeping my feet in this shoulder width apart stance, okay? And now I'm going to go back to the mechanic. I'm going to bring it up in front, and now instead of moving it around with my arm, I'm just going to turn my hips, rotate, and now it's ready to go. I didn't have to move my arm at all. So again, as it comes down, I start to turn right when it wants to turn. I bring it up in front, and I rotate back around this way. And we're just going to bring it up. So we're kind of figuring out where it wants to turn. Now you can turn your hips a little bit in front of the turn, and that accelerates that mechanic just a little bit. But until you get this down and you feel the basic mechanic, I wouldn't worry about throwing any other hip mechanics in. And again, when I'm rotating, I'm not moving my arm like we were at first. I'm just rotating my body. Okay, and now we're going to add a little bit of feet into this. So as it comes around, I'm going to rotate my toes so I can get a little more rotation. So now I have a little bit more lateral rotation than I did before. And if you want, you can start to lower your center a little bit and just really try and feel how it feels from the ground up now that we've gotten this mechanic down with our sword. Okay? So that's one. And we started here with the downward motion. So now we're going to start back here. Feet shoulder width apart. We're not rotating. And this time we're going to bring the sword up. We're going to go the other way and drop it in behind. And then with just our hand, we're going to move it in front of our face. And when our armpit closes, we're going to point to the shield side and let the sword drop and turn and come back to here. Boom. Arm only. Drop and turn. And load. You have just enough. It's kind of like that roller coaster. It goes down and just enough inertia to plop over. When I come around, point, it wants to roll, and we're down. Around, point, transition, and down. This time let's use our body. So we're going to turn with our bellies, not our arms. I'm going to rotate as far as I can, point, and as it starts to come down and turn, I'm going to rotate my hips, looking this way, and bring it into here. Rotate my hips, point, feel the transition, and load. So now I'm going to try and do it just fast enough that I'm letting inertia move it instead of my arm. So it kind of just flips down, comes around, flips down. Okay? Keeping my posture upright, trying not to lean. Okay, and boom. This time we're gonna incorporate the feet. So I'm here, as I start to turn, I turn my foot, turn my foot, turn my foot, turn my foot. And so now I'm just getting it into this comfortable create power, and it's just a nice little flow. I'm not using any more muscle than I need to lift and maneuver the sword, letting the sword tell me how it wants to flow. Okay? All right, so when you get comfortable with that, let's switch it to the other hand. I find this really valuable for folks that aren't fighting with their offhand as much, or they're trying to learn the mechanics. First thing you should do is learn how the sword wants to move in that hand, because this hand is different than your dominant hand. It's going to have different angles that it wants to naturally go to. So getting to know that sword angle again from your other hand is important. So again, we start off with just this nice basic flip, feet are shoulder width apart again in that non-combative stance. And now we're going to bring it up through, around the face and point. Okay, around the face and point. And when you feel comfortable to where you're keeping this in this nice controlled line, it's not wobbling in and out. I'm not bringing it down in front, around, and whipping it around. It's just this nice controlled line. As I hit myself in the head. Okay? Then you can turn your body. Now we eliminate that arm rotation. Now the arm is just holding it up. We can squeeze with our fingers to start this mechanic. Instead of using my arm, I just squeeze with my fingers and let it roll. Squeeze. And when I say squeeze with my fingers, I'm squeezing with my pinky finger and my ring finger. My pointer finger and thumb are pretty relaxed, just sort of holding that circle around the sword. And I've added my feet in, just like we did with our right hand. Okay, so then we come back to our gentle posture here, and now we go to the outside. And we bring it in and around. Again, we've locked the hips just to kind of get a feel. And we're letting this move. I'm just squeezing my pinky finger right here, just to let it roll, keeping my forefinger and thumb relaxed. And now we're going to add in the hips. I rotate my hips, rotate my hips, rotate, rotate. Now feet, rotate my feet. And I kind of keep them a bit independent right now. So I always have one rooted and one root that turns. Okay? So the other great aspect of this mechanic, not just to get to know your sword, but it kind of has some fundamental flow properties that go right into sword technique. I'm going to show you before I show you those. I'm just going to show you now. If we go into, we'll go back to right hand. If we go into a fighting stance, or more of a kind of a balanced fighting stance, I've got my shield leg forward, my sword leg is back, toes parallel to my heel, and we're going to do the same mechanic. So I start off here, I bring it up, around, and now when I use my hips, I feel like I have my shield hand up here. And I can shift my weight as I'm doing this over my foot, and I can incorporate my toe. And now this time it's more just that back toe that rotates because I'm in a fighting stance. Okay? Now if we take this to the lapel, and I'll do this left-handed since my camera is set up that way. I'm going to shift to shield leg forward. Okay, and the first mechanic we're going to look at is as it comes up from the backside. So I bring it up here, and here's our standard mechanic. Adjust my stance to the lapel a little bit. And so as I bring it up, instead of just coming across and back down, I can turn it into a flat snap. here, flat snap, recover. This is kind of the old teardrop recovery, but I can turn that right into that recovery too. So let's not worry about that. So again, I can turn it into a leg blow, head blow. And if we go the other direction, now I have a nice offside mechanic. So I come up, I can transfer my weight. Transfer my weight. I can even come in here and continue the flow there. So play with those flows and see how they break for you and how they work. You can, as you're coming through these, and we've got this outside one where we come down and in and across. If I just turn my body a little bit, shield leg forward, and instead of coming to here, I just change my circle, and now I have a wrap, right? So I come in, offside, or I come in, and as I turn to come across, I can throw the wrap. So experiment how that flow translates into sword technique and sword blows, and we can look at that in a later class if anybody wants to. So I hope everybody enjoyed that. Hopefully that'll help some folks understand some basic sword mechanics and get a feel for those new swords or those old swords we're dusting off. If you liked it, go ahead and subscribe to the channel, click the little bell so that you can catch future episodes when we add some new mechanics and basic flow stuff. So really appreciate you listening. If you have any questions, throw them in the comments. I would hope to do a live Zoom, maybe call on some of these classes in the future, so stay tuned. Thank you.